Hi.
Yeah, good. What time is it over there?
It's 15 p.m.
Oh, okay, so it's afternoon. It's morning here. So good afternoon and good morning to me.
Yeah, good morning to you. All right, so tell us your views about the history of the Palestine-Israel conflict.
Well, I think we all know by now that it begins with, European imperialism. This is the Nakba in 1948, but we can go back into history and have a proper discussion because when you mention history, people often get a bit biblical, but even in the biblical sources, there are people there when we're told that, the Israelites were to set up settlements in that geographical area. So I think but we can also go way back because Palestine is mentioned in the histories of Herodotus, and this is, I think, before Common Era, right? This is maybe some years before the Bible was put together. So I think the proper historical context is to begin in the 20th century, not to go way back into history, because there are historical records that that geographical area was called Palestine in classical times, and the evidence is in Herodotus's histories. So I think, like I said, the proper historical context is to begin with the Nakba, when the people of Palestine were driven out of their lands in 1948. And this was basically a product of European imperialism and fascism, right? And I think we can make the historical connection with how European fascism treated Jews and how European imperialism has connected the whole world, right? So basically, the British were the colonizers of that area up until 1948, and then they made deals with both Palestine, the people of Palestine, and some uh, Jewish people, right after the Holocaust. So I, I think that's where we begin.
Okay. So in your opinion, who is to blame in hostilities in Palestine?
Well, I think the immediate answer to that for many people is Hamas, that Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th. But that's a bit short-sighted, right? Like I said, this goes way back with the Nakba. And if anyone is to blame, if any country is to blame, it's the British. And when I say British, I don't mean all British people. We're talking about the ruling class here, right? Because imperialism always benefits the ruling class. And we all know what was happening in England at the time that they were doing these things. Most of the colonists were poor people. They couldn't have profited from Britain's imperial exploits elsewhere. So I think if anyone and if any group of people is to blame, it's the uh, imperial benefactors of Britain and the other European powers who contributed to this conflict. So yeah, I think. But then again, we can talk about what's happening currently, right? If the state of Israel, which doesn't represent all Jewish people, right? Because all states represent the interest of their elites, and the common historical message that's always out there is that states are for people, but we can separate the political state from the people. And I think it's a bit different with Israel because we but it's the same old story, right? People have been incited by political state. Common people have been incited by the political state to do things that benefit the state, but not necessarily the people, because we know about stories of how people, Palestinians are being treated by Israelis in the West Bank, and this is common people with the support of the political state and the IDF, right? Right, that's the Israeli Defense Forces. So I think that there's that element that people think that the state is a representation of the masses, and therefore whatever the state does is in the interest of the masses, which is clearly not the case, as we can see, because there are millions of Israelis who are not going to benefit from this, and we can tell with the conflict that um, there have been casualties on both sides, even though it's disproportionate. There have been more casualties on the Palestinian side, right? But yeah, so I think we should get this straight that the Israeli state does not represent all Israelis, and neither does it represent all Jewish people. It can make that claim all at once, but we know from the political contradictions there that it does not. And neither does Hamas represent the people of Palestine, right? So yeah, that would be my answer to that question.
So in this case, is there World War III possible to be?
Well, there's a quote from Jean Baudrillard, the French philosopher and sociologist. There's a quote from a book. I've forgotten the title of the book, but it goes something like this. He said, according to this, there's never going to be a World War III because it has already happened, right? And it begins with the Cold War. That's for him. World War III began with the Cold War. And so I think if we're going to talk about war, then we have to talk about the political economic context of war. We live in capitalism, which is a war economy, right? And in this is a materialist critique. So if you I don't like the term Marxist, but I suppose some people will describe me as a Marxist. And war is a product of competition. And the capitalist economy is based on competition between people. And this is how conflict erupt locally, and then it becomes international, the competition for resources, which is really not necessary because everything that we are told to compete for, we can actually share. There's no need to compete for resources, for food, clothing, shelter, and anything else. We live in great abundance with all the technological advancements of the past century. There's no need for war or World War III or whatever name that it's going to be called, right? There's no need for the war in Russia, but because we live in capitalism and because it is bolstered by imperialism, this is what we are contending with, right? So I don't think that there's going to be World War III, but I think that we're already living in World War III. And we're surrounded by poverty, even though we live in a time of great abundance, right? According to the UN, we produce more food, right, to sustain twice the population of the earth now. We shouldn't be competing for food, but here we are because our fundamental the fundamental basis of society is built on competition. Employment is competition, capitalism is competition, and competition creates war. So as far as that goes, we're living in World War III, and it is totally unnecessary because we have enough resources to satisfy every human need with artificial intelligence and automation. I mean, we have technology that can build houses, like print. The word is print houses with TD printing, 3D printing, right? Additive manufacturing, and yet we have homeless people in the street, right? And it depends on where you are. If you're in the U.S., we're told that there are more empty houses than there are homeless people, right? So this is all war. Right? It's a war on poor people instead of there being a war on poverty, right? And we can easily solve that. And at the end of the um, World War II, when the two nuclear bombs were dropped on in Japan, Albert Camus, the French philosopher, wrote an essay called, I think, between it was published in a French paper at the time. It was called Combat, and in it he says we can either use our technological advancement for collective prosperity or collective doom, and we still haven't done that. We're doing the former instead of collective prosperity. We have collective doom. So that's where the question comes from. Is there going to be World War III? Are we going to doom ourselves collectively, even though we don't need to? I don't think there's going to be an all-out conflict that way, but we already live in a society that's deep in conflict, and it's economic and political. And as much as I don't think that's going to lead to an all-out world war, I think what we have now is itself a world war because of poverty, because of capitalist induced poverty, mental illness, and all of this that does not need to be in a civilized society. So that's my answer to that.
And what kind of solution do you see for this conflict, Palestine and Israel?
Well, this might sound a bit out of touch, but globally, I think that we have to start thinking as a people with a common heritage, right? This idea that you're from that place, I'm from here, I speak this language and you speak that language, and therefore we can't come together and do things together. We need to put an end to. And this is the basis of nationalism, that we're different peoples because we have different skin colors and different languages. But that is in no way a threat to our shared humanity, right? So the solution to the problem, the conflict in Palestine, is for the common folks there to come together and say that this land is here. We can share it, right? We should forget all notions of nationalism, that I am a Jew, you're an Arab, and that these are all unnecessary divisions, right? They're totally unnecessary. It's for the common people to come together and then decide that this is totally unnecessary, right? I am a socialist, so my solution is that we need to get rid of these nationalities, these nationalisms, all of us unnecessary identities that we've created for ourselves, right? This racism, right? It's totally unnecessary. We're all human beings. We need food, clothing, shelter, and leisure, entertainment, right? This is a fact of life. Nationalism is not a fact of life. It's ideology. No one eats nationalism unless you're a member of the ruling class, which most people aren't. Most people are common people who have been given ruling class, bourgeois, aristocratic ideas, and therefore think that, oh, I'm different, you're different, and therefore we should go to war. But that is totally unnecessary. So the solution to the problem now is for the people in Palestine to recognize that they share a common heritage as human beings, not as Semitic peoples, which is another problem. Whenever um, uh, a crime is committed against Jews, the term that's used is, oh, it's an anti-Semitic crime, or, you know, but the Arabs are also a Semitic people, which isn't always talked about. The Semitic people, there are Semitic people in Africa and in Asia. The Arabs, Ethiopians, Eritreans, these are all Semitic people. So anti-Semitism, the problem with anti-Semitism is that it's a localized term that means anti-Jewishness, right? But what's happening there now is anti-Semitism collectively because of the collective punishments that's being inflicted on the people of Palestine. They are Semitic peoples as well, if you're going by that semantics. But directly, like I said, the problem to the conflict there now is for the people there to recognize that they can share the land, they can share the olive trees, they can share everything, right? So that's that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That sounds actually simple solution. Like we can
I
just
agree.
share. We need humanity. Just we have to
Yeah.
be more patient and do good deeds. But unfortunately, I guess it's not so simple as
Yeah.
it is. And but
Yeah.
it's a great solution if all people could understand that,
Yeah.
and maybe some awareness could come to them. But yeah, unfortunately not. Thank you.
Yeah.
We're done with our questions.
Okay.
It was
Okay.
helpful. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Yeah. You too. Have a great day there. All right. Bye-bye.